Well, it looks like it's 9 o'clock, so we'll kind of get started, see if we have any more folks join us. Like we were just mentioning, this is our first one, trying to do a virtual class. So thank you very much for coming and taking the time this morning to join us. This is our first Saturday being open, so we'll be open at 10 a.m. this morning. We'll see what that looks like. And with the nice weather, probably pretty busy today. But again, thanks for joining us. We'd like to go through a few things about getting your pond and water feature ready for the coming season, as we definitely feel like spring's here now. Again, technical wise, we'll see how it goes. Everybody's muted to come in. You might keep yourself muted unless you want to ask a question. I'll try and stop periodically and ask for questions, but I think it doesn't seem like that big a group that if you have something that you're really pressing and need to ask a question, just unmute yourself and pop in and interrupt me, and we can go through it. Should have a little bit time left at the end too for some questions and stuff. So if you want to save until then, it's up to you. Whatever works best for you. We'll try and work through this format. Like I said, kind of the first time. I should introduce myself. I'm Tim Boettcher. I'm one of the owners of True Pump. You can see I'm sitting outside in the yard. It's nice enough to be out here in short sleeves this morning, so that's great. Definitely some familiar faces and familiar names that are joining us this morning. So yeah, we look forward to giving you some ideas of what to do and have you have a chance to ask some questions too. I'm going to do the share screen thing because I do have a document that just kind of goes through kind of a spring startup. Some things may apply to your water feature and some may be a little bit different, but if we have this, it kind of helps give us a guideline. Some of this stuff we actually just did here yesterday, these past couple days. We finally got around to getting all our water features kind of up and running. So we went through the same checklist just like everybody else. So number one, a lot of people put a de-icer in the pond to start the season, or I mean for the winter, to keep a hole open. That helps to keep the oxygen exchange for the fish. So I think we're past any freezes for the year. I don't expect to see any more ice on the pond. So probably time that you can take that out and store that away for next year. Another big one is the aerator. A lot of people that don't turn their pond that turn their waterfalls off for the winter add an aerator, or other people add an aerator too. An aerator is always a good thing. It's never a bad thing to have aeration. But this is the time that if you were just using that for circulation and now you're turning on your main pump, you could take that aerator out. Or your other option is, again, oxygen. More oxygen is always a good thing. So you can leave that aerator in, let it run all year long. The one thing that we do change is in the warmer temperatures, the air stones, the bubblers, we can actually move down to the bottom of the pond. Normally in the winter, you should have moved, if you do run an aerator, you should have moved those air stones up to a shelf so that you don't disturb that lower level warmer water. So if you have that aerator in, you can either take it out now or go ahead and leave it in there, drop those air stones down to the bottom. That way we get full circulation throughout the pond. This is also spring is kind of clean out time, pond clean outs. Our contractor customers do a lot of clean outs. And it's kind of up to you. Some people are kind of in the habit just to get a fresh start of doing that every single year. I think a lot of you have seen our pond. We haven't drained and cleaned our pond in 15 years. So keeping it up and keeping the maintenance going and the ecosystem going, we really haven't had the need to do that. Really the biggest reason for a clean out, a lot of times if you turn the pond off for the winter, you do need to clean out just because so much debris and crud has accumulated over the winter and the fall on the bottom of the pond. But that's really when you need to clean out, when you have lots and lots of debris that you just is hard to physically remove, or you kind of are starting to build up even to the point where you're getting like that black gunk sludge, not really algae, but more that gunky sludge on the bottom. So that might be the time to do a clean out, or if you had a really hard time last year keeping your pond clear, and maybe there's just a lot of debris there that's built up. that you would consider do that clean out. We also rent a pond vacuum here. A number of people take advantage of that. If you have a smaller water feature, just using that vacuum works pretty well. It's like a big shop vac. When a contractor comes in to do a clean out, though, they actually will come, take the fish out, empty all of it out, power wash it, pump it out. You're really trying to get rid of all that leftover debris and stuff. So something to think about, but not necessary. Certainly every single year, just when a lot of stuff has accumulated. Sorry, I muted myself. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. I don't know how I did that. My little screen went away. Sorry about that. So if you decide not to do a clean out, though, or any time to start up the season, we want to get the worst of the debris out of the pond. Anything that's down in there is going to break down over the course of the season and kind of feed the algae cycle. So whether it's pine needles or leaves or those kind of things, leftover plant material from the off season, mulch, whatever, if you have a good net with a good handle, kind of just getting the worst of that out. You don't have to get 100% of it out, but getting the vast majority of that out is just going to help the season start off better. The other thing to consider would be doing actually a partial water change. And really that's if your water quality, a lot of times if you haven't run it, haven't circulated, and the water's just looking really gunky and off color and stuff, you could always consider a partial water change. I would probably stay away from doing that if you do have fish, just because you're better off getting the system up and running. But sometimes doing a water change can help. If you do have fish, of course, you want to make sure you add the detoxifier, the dechlorinator. Anytime we do a large amount of water, we always want to add that because chlorine is very toxic to fish. So we don't want to add a large amount of chlorinated water without neutralizing that chlorine that's there. So that part, we've kind of got some of the pond itself cleaned up and ready to go. And then we kind of want to go through and look at kind of our mechanical stuff to see how that looks for the season, see what we need to do. So first of all, the skimmer, ideally, we want to clean that out. We want to make sure, everything's in working order. Our net, our basket, or whatever isn't damaged or doesn't have holes in it. But we want to clean those out real well. Might be a good time to change the skimmer mat. A lot of people ask us, how often do I need to change that? And depending on how long or how often you rinse it out, every year or two, probably it's a good idea to change that mat, especially not necessarily just because it still has debris stuck in it that you can't rinse out, but those mats start to get kind of floppy and the fibers break down, so they don't work quite as well. So as you're cleaning out that skimmer, you can check your mat, see if that's looking okay. With the pump turned off and everything not running, you want to just check to make sure that, especially like the AquaSurge pump has a screen on the front of it, that you don't have any leftover debris or rocks or sticks or any of that kind of stuff in there to start the season. I know with the newer skimmers, it's kind of nice. You can actually close the door and you can pump the whole thing out and you can clean out all the junk in the bottom, because there's always some stuff that gets past the net and the mat and stuff. So you can even get any of that debris down in the bottom of the skimmer cleaned out too. That's a good time to get that out of there. Then probably the one of the bigger jobs of all of this is cleaning out your biofalls, depending on the size of it. Here we have one small one big one. It took the guys, a couple hours to get those cleaned out yesterday. But we actually take all the mats, the bio balls or lava rock or whatever else you have in there. We just get everything out of there. And then at that point, clean out all that junk and rocks and whatever else might be in the bottom of the biofalls completely. And you want to rinse all those mats and stuff out. We talk about, really, this is only an annual cleaning. The skimmer mat we do as needed, but a biofalls normally is only cleaned in the spring. That's the only time. We tell you not to rinse those mats off because you're killing all the good stuff that's on there. But as long as you do that cleaning early in the season, like now, there's no bacteria growing on those mats yet anyway. So rinsing them out, we're not getting rid of the good stuff. So you want to get those mats out, get them all cleaned off. Same thing with the mats. A lot of people ask, do I need to replace them every year? I would say certainly not. They may have gunk and junk in them, but the mats up there really, they're there for surface area, for the good bacteria to grow. So even if they look terrible, unless they're totally falling apart, I think the mats that there can go quite a number of years before they need to be replaced. More and more, we've got people switched over from, a lot of people use lava rock as their biological media years ago. Lava rock works fine. It's cheap. It's light. The biggest negative is over time, it kind of breaks down and all the little pores and stuff get plugged up. So you might look at the lava rock if you have that. You might consider switching over to the bio balls, because they're little plastic balls with lots of surface area. They're a little bit expensive, but they're going to last forever. You're never going to have to change them out. So normally either your lava rock or your bio balls are going to be in one of those mesh bags. You can take that out, put it on the lawn, rinse it off real well, take those filter mats out, rinse that out, get the worst of the stuff in, and then all that can go back into your biofalls to be ready to start the season. So the other thing, you want to kind of take a look at your plants too. Some of your other plants, like grasses and stuff, if you haven't trimmed them back, a lot of times we leave those till spring. So that's a good time to just kind of do a touch up and walk around and trim everything back that might need some trimming. Lilies and things like that, all that's going to be, you're not going to have any growth left on those normally. But you might consider splitting them. If you have lilies that are, if you have them in a pot and they're jumping out of the pot, or you can tell that tuber is getting really long, you can always just chop it in half and make another lily and split it and move it, or give it to other friends with a pond or whatever. But over time, those will tend to get rather large, and you can always split those pretty easily. And again, that's a good time to fertilize. Normally, the only thing we really fertilize is the lilies. We certainly see more pads and more flowers if you fertilize those on a monthly basis. So really, we just have the little fertilizer tabs. It means sticking your whole arm in, and it's a little cold probably right now. If you don't have the pond gloves or whatever, maybe you wait till it gets a little warmer to do that. But you kind of drill a little hole with your finger, put a couple fertilizer tabs along each lily root, and then that'll help that plant over the course of this season to, like you said, to put out more pads and more flowers. So the other thing, if a lot of people are starting to think about turning their irrigation system on, but hooking up that fill valve. I think we're past any freezes, most likely. It looks like, looking at the weather report for the next couple weeks, and I think after that we'll be fine. So if you don't have a fill valve, obviously don't worry about it, but that's a nice convenience that you don't have to always be dropping or throwing the hose in the pond to fill it up. So you can hook up that fill valve now if your irrigation system, once your irrigation system gets turned on. Most people have it tied into that. And then it's time to start adding the water treatments. That's one of the biggest questions you get. It's like, when do I start adding stuff? When do I start adding bacteria? Each pond's a little bit different. If you do have a thermometer, it helps a little bit to be able to kind of see what that water temperature is at. And 50 degrees is kind of the key mark. So when we hit 50 consistently, and again, that's not 50 degrees air temperature, that's 50 degrees pond temperature, and that means it stays above 50 the whole day. So maybe the best time to measure it is in the first thing in the morning, because that's when it's going to be the coldest. And if you're nowhere near 50, which I would imagine most ponds right now are probably still in the lower mid 40s, we're not quite ready to put in the regular bacteria yet. 50 degrees is kind of that key where we can start going to the regular bacteria and get that started and get that added. We can start doing even now the cold water bacteria. And again, bacteria, it helps to break down the nutrients in the pond, and that's really the one that helps to keep our water clear. So we start adding that, again, that bacteria once we hit that. The other thing, we've already got people coming in saying they got string algae blooming. So normally early spring is probably one of the toughest times for string algae, just because your plants aren't growing yet. You're starting to have some nutrients. The water temperatures are warming up, so we'll start to see some string algae. So you can certainly start adding an algicide like Profix or the Aquascape Algaecide now. I had a couple of people who, or a number of people now, who have started to put algicide in year round, and they've said it works really well even in the colder temperatures. Algicide is still effective, and it just makes it easier to start off the year when you're starting without not a lot of string algae. I always tell people it's much easier to stay ahead of it than it is to catch up. So just something to maybe consider. Maybe in the winter you put your algicide, if you're used to doing that, put it in once a month, even just enough to keep ahead of it. But now, as we start to not only add our beneficial bacteria, we definitely want to start adding our algicide to take care of the string algae. Again, because we're past the freezes, if you do have the dosing system, and what the dosing system does, if you're not familiar with that, it actually adds your water treatments automatically. It's a little container. It has a bag of water treatment in it, and it puts it in automatically, so you don't have to do it. So, but we can't run those in the winter because the bag will freeze. So that's the kind of thing too, where a lot of people just keep them in the garage. You can bring the dosing system out. You can hook that back up to start the year. The other thing, if you do have an ion gen, you can turn that back on pretty soon. We try and let people know, especially when you have fish, the ion gen puts copper into the water. And so if you have fish, you don't ever want to use the ion gen when there's no string algae to absorb the copper. So once you start seeing some fuzz on the rocks and stuff, that's the time you can go ahead and install and turn that ion gen back on. We wouldn't run it in the winter because there's nothing to absorb the copper, and it could be real harmful for the fish. But we do go ahead and turn that on once we see some fuzz, and then that can kind of help control it. And then probably the other question we get a lot, if your fish are like our fish here at the store, they're starting to wake up, they're starting to come to the top, they give you that little look like they need to be fed, but it's still the same, that 50-degree temperature. We don't want to start feeding them until the water temperature stays consistently above 50. And the reason for that is they're cold-blooded. So below 50, their digestive system doesn't work the same. They will still eat the food. They won't be able to digest it properly. And then if it gets cold enough, it can actually be harmful, and it can actually kill them. If they take food in and they can't digest it, it just basically sits there. So be patient with your fish. There are some cold water fish foods that don't have as much nutrients in them, so they're easier to digest. But I don't know, your fish are actually going to survive just fine. I would give them a few more weeks before I would start feeding them. Again, a little thermometer is kind of a helpful thing to be able to know exactly where you're at. So that's kind of the quick list of going through. I'd like to open it up for questions and see, if it's about your individual pond or ponds in general. What kind of questions can I answer from folks?
So I have a question. We put some of the lilies to the bottom of the pond. This is the first year we've had sort of fish and plants.
Okay.
And we put some of them to the bottom of the pond, but we didn't get a chance before like the first, snow hit, and a few of them are just in pots in maybe 12 to 18 inches of water.
Okay.
They look dead. Are they going to come back, or should we just pull those out now?
No, I'd give it a shot. I mean, you might as well drop them in and see how they do. Just keep an eye on them as compared to the others. I don't think it's really going to hurt anything. If they're dead, it's not going to really hurt anything. As long as I would, clip off any dead growth or anything that's still there as far as the plants go, and just drop them down in and go ahead and fertilize them, because that might help kind of spur them on too, and just see how they do. And then if the ones that come up, you keep; the ones that don't, you get rid of. But I wouldn't toss them now and assume that they didn't make it, because they are pretty tough.
Okay. I have one more question. We have a few irises. I think we want to have more. When would you start adding those? Is it appropriate to do it now, or do we wait till it's warm?
Yeah, I mean, iris are nice because they definitely do, you know, they multiply pretty well. But I would still wait a little bit. Like, we don't even get our plants in here until the end of the month, just because we want to make sure, you know, everything's gonna settle in and do well, that the water's warm enough. You know, that your plants that are in there are fine. They've wintered in there and everything, but putting something new in now might be a little shocking for it, depending on, especially where it was grown and stuff. So I would still wait at least till the middle of the month. And like I said, we're getting ours in the end of the month.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Tim, I have a question. I've had my pond, I think it's been going for like 3 years. And the last 2 years, I've lost a couple of koi in the winter.
Okay.
They just die. They don't look bad. They don't look like they're diseased or anything. Is there something I should be doing, or do you have an explanation for that?
I mean, it could be a wide variety of things, but there's nothing obvious like sores or anything like that.
No, they just die and float into the thing. Yeah.
Okay. And did that happen like early in the season or late in the season, or do you know?
Usually it's late in the season. I usually find them like January, February.
And I think sometimes it's due to, we get those warmer spells, and then, you know, we get a real a hard freeze. Because I know we had a couple of people into the store that have gone years and years without losing any fish, and we had a couple of kind of freak weather things like that, really deep freeze too, that caused some problems for some people. So do you actually run your waterfall and stuff in the winter?
Yeah, it runs all winter. I have a plethora of goldfish. They're just happy as larks, but I'm.
And did your pond freeze solid this winter, or
no,
did?
No.
Okay.
They were always able to be down there. And like I have one old guy, he's lasted through it all. It's
but I mean, when I say freeze solid, like freeze solid over the top.
No, it's always been open by the pump, and I shoveled it out to make sure there was always airflow going through there.
And of course, if you had your waterfall going, then you would have had that part of it would have been open too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't have any other good suggestions as far as that goes, and not a lot of debris or anything in the bottom.
No. I have more this year than I've had in the past, but I'm gonna because we just had a weird fall. But
and the reason I ask about debris, sometimes as that stuff breaks down, it's almost possible that can create ammonia, which is hard on the fish. But I think more than anything, it's just the temperature swings that we get here in Colorado, that we get some that really extreme cold, and then we get a 50-degree day in January too, and bring that temperature up. So I mean, keeping the water, the system running is always to your advantage. So unfortunately, I don't have any other good ideas of why that might have happened.
Okay. And then I have one more question. I had 2 mallards visit me yesterday, floating in my pond when I went out there. Should I keep them out, or?
If you like ducks, that's great, and they're fun to watch. If you want your pond to be clean and clear, then I would encourage them to disappear. They are really dirty. They'll go around and they'll root around in the plants and stuff, and they create a lot of waste, and you will not have a clean pond. And the other thing is, sometimes they're looking for nesting grounds. So, if they settle in, they may stay. So,
I doubt my golden retrievers will let them stay. Okay.
Well, and that's a good way to just leave the dog outside a little bit more, to chase them off. But yeah, we get that a lot. People are like, oh, they're so cute. And it's like, yeah, but they are going to mess up your pond. So.
Okay. That's what I figured, but they were so cute.
No, that's a great question. Yeah.
Tim, I don't know what a lawn gen is.
Ion gen?
Yeah.
Okay, an ion gen is a little electrical panel, and it puts copper into the water. So basically, you have a little electrical panel that you plug in, and then you put this copper probe down normally into your skimmer. And so it just hangs there, and it puts copper into the water. And what that does is control the string algae. So you wouldn't have to add algaecide or anything else. So it's a lot less maintenance. It's real easy to use. The biggest disadvantage is the expense of it. It's about $400.
Oh, that's why I don't have it.
Okay. So it is about that much, and then you have to replace the probe every year or two too, and the probe's about 120 or 30.
Okay, I guess I'll just go with what I have.
Yeah, but some people are like, I'm tired of adding all this stuff, and especially on a bigger pond, a lot of people really like them, so that's why we talk about it. So
Okay,
good question.
thank you.
Hey, Tim, this is Lucas. I kind of have a question in regards to that. We do have an ion gin.
Okay.
What additional chemicals or beneficial bacteria? We don't have fish. We do have plants. What else should we be putting in the pond? It's a little bit.
Yeah. So a good question. So you wouldn't need to do an algaecide since your ion gin would be controlling the string algae, but you would still want to do the beneficial bacteria, even without fish, just to help make sure that we're breaking down those nutrients in the pond and keeping the water clear. So beneficial bacteria is still together with the ion gin.
Perfect. Thanks.
You bet.
This is Carrie, Tim. Did I understand you to say that we should be putting our doser together now, putting the bag into the doser now?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably getting pretty close to that point. It's the same 50-degree thing, you know, and I think we're past any freezes. I mean, you can always watch. It may not hurt to wait another week or two to get your doser up and running, but we want to make sure just that we start adding that beneficial bacteria, that, you know, we don't go through that green phase, that we've already got that extra bacteria added in there. So starting the doser sooner rather than later is a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Garrett.
Hi, Tim. This is Deb Pushcheck, and I was wondering, do you use algaecide in the pond if you have fish?
You still can. Yep, that's a great question. We've just, you know, there's two different kinds of algae, and the bacteria does great for keeping the water clear, but it doesn't control the string algae. So the algaecide that we use is okay with fish as long as you stick to the recommended dosage. And that dosage is 1 ounce per 600 gallons for the Profix. So it is very diluted, and fish do just fine in that concentration, but it still helps to control the string algae. We get a lot of questions too. Is it okay if my dogs drink out of it, and birds and everything else? And again, because it's the 1 ounce and 600 gallons, it's so diluted. It's okay for your pups to play in it, and the birds drink out of it too. So and just a warning too, we're on the 40-minute Zoom. So if for some reason we go away, that's because our time ran out. But go ahead. Sorry.
So I use the Profix Professional Strength 2 times concentrated formula. Is that an algaecide?
It is, and that's one thing too. Just a lot of water treatments are very vague in what they say, because the EPA actually controls what they can say. And if you say it kills algae, you have to be EPA registered and things like that. So a lot of them are very, that's why it doesn't say algaecide on the outside of the bottle, but that is what it is.
And then one last question. We have, I don't know if it's a moss or an algae. We don't have string algae on the rocks, and they are emitting air bubbles. So, and a little bit of foam on the surface of the filter box.
That's interesting. I mean, usually that green coating is still a kind of string algae, so I would still treat it the same way. The only other thing is there's one kind of crazy kind of algae that does a little bit of the bubbling thing, and actually how you treat that is you actually put lots and lots of bacteria in to get rid of that one. So I would start just doing the regular algaecide to keep an eye on it. I would think that would take care of it. And as far as foam goes, I mean, sometimes just the stuff breaking down can cause that. Heavy rains can cause that. We do have a defoamer that you can add, but normally that just kind of, you keep adding it. And normally, I mean, it's one of those things that'll kind of go through the cycle and everything will balance. and that foam will go away.
We haven't had this problem. This is the first year that we've had this problem with the pond, and we've had the pond about 20 years.
Okay. Do you know the last time it was cleaned? I mean, like a big.
It was cleaned last year, and
Okay.
we had one of our koi had a parasite, so we had to do a detoxifying treatment
Okay.
of the kind of like a quarantine treatment.
Sure.
Which we got that product from you guys to do that, and it worked, and she's still alive and well and doing well.
That's great. That's good to hear. So yeah, if you had it cleaned out last year, I wouldn't think it's something that, kind of accumulated over time. So, I mean, I think I would just keep on the course of how you usually treat it. And I'm guessing it's going to take care of itself in most cases if you're patient with it.
We have lost one fish this winter. We had two fish that ended up in the skimmer basket. And I discovered them because I checked the pond every day and put them back. They were both alive at the time they went in the skimmer basket, and was during the big freeze. And so I put them back in the water, and they both were doing fine. One died a couple weeks ago with they call it the pine cone disease.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So that's what took that one out. And then the second one has got some something growing on it, like fuzzy. So I think he's probably on his way out as well. So I don't know if with that type of algae situation, if it would be most beneficial for us to just get the pond cleaned.
Being that you did it last year, I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. And the things you're describing aren't because the pond isn't clean, really. I mean, there's always a possibility. It's two different things: the pine cone type of disease, and then the normally what you're describing is more of a fungus kind of disease on that other fish, which you can certainly treat those. The problem is a lot of times the treatments that are used don't work as well in cold water. That you have to wait till the water to warm up to use the treatments, and you have to do some water changes, and then by the time you wait for that, sometimes it's too late for that fish. But I would still consider doing that fungal treatment when it warms up a little bit.
Is that fish jeopardizing the other fish?
They shouldn't be. I mean, you want to keep a close eye on them for sure, but not normally. No.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You shouldn't be worried about the others getting infected from him, as we talked about diseases and stuff.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think this is very
You bet.
great information. I really appreciate it.
Glad we could help. Yeah, you bet.
Hi, my name is Holly. I have a question. I just bought the Iogen system and
Okay.
put it in. I have a little bit of algae going on right now. I was wondering what setting I should start out with.
I mean, we always say start as low as possible. And do you have fish?
No fish.
No fish? Then you actually don't have to worry about it. You can crank it up if you want. Even if you don't have fish, though, you kind of normally want to keep it as low as possible just to make that probe last as long as possible.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you don't have fish, I might take it up to 3 or 4, and then when you see the buzz go away, then bring it back down to 1 or 2. If people have fish, normally we would say start out at 1 or 2, and then if it doesn't keep up, then raise it up. But being that you don't have fish, you can take it up a little higher.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to no algae this year, hopefully.
One other thing, just real quick at the bottom, hopefully you can still see my sharing screen, but I've got our phone number and also an email where both Joe and I get that email, that info@truepump.com. If you have specific questions, you can always feel free to call us, but you can always, if something comes up, after our Zoom today that you think of, you can always shoot us an email there. Anybody else?
Tim, I have a question. This is Kathy Peters. In terms of putting in these chemicals, the beneficial bacteria and the Profix, I thought I understood that it's best to somehow space them apart, but I can't remember. I can't remember how that goes.
Thanks for bringing that up, because I should have mentioned that when I was talking. Normally we try and offset those. So maybe Wednesday is Algaecide day and Sunday is bacteria day or whatever. But you do try and split those up and not do them on the same day.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, my name is Jake. I have a question. Sorry, I got on the call a little bit late, but I've got a pond that's about 3 years old now, and I'm starting to get pretty good algae buildup on the rocks. And I'm just curious. I'm thinking about either doing like a power washing or just using like a kind of a metal brush. Any recommendations on doing a kind of real good cleaning of the rocks?
If it's just on the rocks and it's really just kind of that coating, I would just try and treat it honestly with like an algaecide. If it's a lot of debris and leaves and stuff like that, then I would definitely probably consider doing the cleaning. As far as the actually brushing the rocks and stuff, the string algae is going to come back as the pond balances out. So you can take every rock out, clean it, and put it back, but probably in a month you're going to have that coating could very well be there again as the pond balances out. So I would do it more, you know, I mean, you could do the power wash thing if you'd like to get rid of it all and start fresh. But like we were talking about earlier, unless there's a lot of debris and stuff in the bottom, I don't think I would do a full cleaning. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well,
actually, let me follow up with one last thing. So you would recommend the kind of dosing of an algaecide you were thinking? Is that what you were?
Yeah. So and do you have fish? Do you have fish?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So yeah, you just I would start doing the algaecide right away. And again, we'd still want to just do that weekly. And just so we can't do an overdose because we have fish. We have to stick to the recommended requirements. So just once a week with the algaecide should catch up to it.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. You're welcome. Well, like I said, I think we're running out of time. I think this is going to cut us off. So rather than wait for that to happen, I just want to say thanks again for everybody that joined us. Feel free to call or email if you have more questions. And thanks. A lot of great questions. You guys brought up some stuff I forgot to mention. So I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy your ponds this season. And we look forward to seeing you in the store too when you need some stuff.
Thank you, Tim.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Have a great day. Have a good Easter.
You too. Bye.